But speaking of the quarterbacks, Michael, Malik Willis, third round, went to the Tennessee Titans. They trade up into the third round to get him. I know you saw this quote from Ryan Tannehill earlier this week. The OTAs are going on right now, so we're starting to get these players back in the facilities talking to the media. And Ryan Tannehill, the starting quarterback of the Titans, had this to say about Malik Willis and their potential mentorship in the QB room.
I mean, that's part of being in a quarterback room in the same room. You know, we're competing against each other. We're watching the same tape. We're doing the same drills. I don't think it's my job to mentor him, but if he learns from me along the way, then that's a great thing.
Woo, Michael!
I couldn't agree more, fam. I couldn't agree more. Look, Stan Van Gundy was talking the other day on the Celtics-Bucks game, and he was talking about to be a leader, you got to be a good player. Like, you can't be a leader and be a bad player. Like, nobody's going to listen to you. You know, and he was talking about if you're going to lead, you got to play good. And I think that ultimately it's not Ryan Tannehill's job to develop Malik Willis. That's what they pay coaches for, and they're paying coaches a lot of money to do that, right? So what Tannehill can do is set an example. He can go to work early. He can put the time and the detail in. He can see all the things that he has. I mean, when Johnny Unitas showed up in training camp and he saw all these quarterbacks that have all these notes on the coverages and the players in the league, it startled him, right? It startled him. It's like, I don't have this, right? So what did he do? He started to create his own. That's what they do. When we drafted Garoppolo, Brady wasn't going to embrace Garoppolo. Brady saw him as a competitor. Brady was going to be kind and work hard. Brady was going to do what Brady wanted to do. And nobody in our building felt like Brady needed to develop Garoppolo. Either Garoppolo was going to fall in and do what he did, or he was going to get cut, or he was going to fall out. I mean, so I think we're making way too much of it. Tannehill's got the right mentality. He's got to worry about himself. I mean, the fact that he was in not rehab, but he was in therapy because of the last game tells you how important the game is to him, and he doesn't feel like himself. I would be concerned if I'm John Robinson about where his mental state is right now.
Well, if you're John Robinson, the general manager of the Titans, and you hear Tannehill say that, does that are you getting excited that your 34-year-old quarterback, okay, he's still got the fire, he still wants to compete with this guy? Is that the takeaway for the GM?
I think it is. I think you got to sit there and say, well, it's got to be important to him, right? I mean, whatever we emphasize is what's important to us. And so it's important to him. I mean, he's a professional athlete. He was embarrassed by his performance in that game. And, well, he should have been. And it has affected him in the offseason. And I think he's trying to prove that he can overcome it. I think it's good. But the problem is I don't doubt his word. But what happens when he has a bad game? Is he going to go back in the tank? Is he going to be so thin-skinned that you're worried about him holding on to the pressure? It's the Ben Simmons thing, Like Ben Simmons, you think Ben Simmons is going to hold up to the pressure? You could say, well, he's getting his back operated on now. Maybe, but I mean, back injuries are certainly problematic, but everybody thought he was going to get cleared. I think the pressure of having to go out there and play is too much for him. And I'm being sympathetic here. So to me, I think that's what would concern me about Tannehill.
Yeah, I think the pressure is the real big thing here for Ryan Tannehill because he's a former first-round pick. It was a top 10 pick for the Miami Dolphins. It didn't work out in Miami. He goes to Tennessee, not necessarily playing with house money, but he came in as the backup. And when Mariota didn't perform up to par, then they put Tannehill in, and he was able to kind of play free. Do you believe that he can play free and pressure-free with Malik Willis behind him? Because Willis wasn't a first-round pick, but there's already the discussions of he's the successor to Tannehill if we get into 2023, 2024.
I think that's a comedy. I think there's no chance Malik Willis will be inactive for every game. I think Logan Woodside will be the backup. I really do. I think there's no chance Willis is coming on that field with very limited knowledge of the pro passing game and being able to go out there and run it and convince Mike Vrabel that he knows what he's doing, and then he can take over the job. See, this is what I think fans missed the boat on, right? Mm-hmm. So the head coach has got to stand in front of the team and say, this guy is so good, I'm going to play him. right? He's got to prove it in practice. Why did Kyle Shanahan not play Trey Lance? Because he couldn't stand in front of the team and convince them. The media was convinced he should start in training camp, right? You remember all those. Everybody said that Trey Lance is having great camps. Kyle could never say it. So, like, you think Willis is going to come out there, learn the offense, do all the things? No chance. There's no chance. He'll be the third-string quarterback. Will he develop in a year? We shall see. But they picked him in the right round. So if he doesn't develop, he's the third round that didn't make it. They have nothing really. They gave it a chance. I mean, why not?
I guess then the thought process behind the draft pick then, is this just a lottery ticket? Because they picked him in the third round for a reason, and you'd think that maybe they see something in him that could develop into a starting quarterback. Because year one, let's say that's like a redshirt year for him to develop and to learn the game and learn the NFL lingo and all that matter. But he was picked for a reason, Michael. Like, this is something that they clearly see something in him to possibly develop later on down the line. I
mean, I definitely. He was graded on their board and they liked him. And so they picked him for that. But just because you like a player, there's certain things. I mean, when you draft a guy and you bring him into your building, you say, okay, here's where I think he can be really good, or here's where I think if he doesn't overcome this, we've kind of blown the pick. Mm-hmm. And I think you got to be realistic. Like, it's not all going to be glory. Like, he's going to have to learn the offense, play faster, not react to to take off and run the first minute the protection breaks down. I mean, we all know what this is going to look like in year one. I mean, he's going to get back there. The game's going to move way too fast for him. It's not going to be comfortable, and he's going to take off and start running. And then we'll see. But I think eventually the only time to evaluate him is next year. Like, if I was Vrabel, I would say to the staff, look, let's not evaluate this guy. Let's teach him the offense. Let's limit what he does, have a package for him, teach him a little bit of what we're trying to get done, and then next year in the offseason really get into him and evaluate him at that point. Because if you start to evaluate him now, you'll make an evaluation error because he's just not ready to play right now. There's just no chance.
Ryan Tannehill has a $36 million cap hit in 2023. A lot of reports and indications are that this could be his last year in Nashville. Malik Willis, do you think we could see him start as soon as next year, or do you think it's even maybe a year away from being a year away, like you like to say?
I think I would be surprised if he did that. But, I mean, we got to wait and see. I mean, there's some hope for the player. They took him. And a key is, I think Vrabel does a really good job of developing talent. That's the part that we never talk about in this whole equation is how are we going to develop talent? How are we going to make the player better? And we'll see. I mean, Henry, I think his contract's up at the end of the year, too. He signed a 3-year deal when he originally went back. So, look, we know this. This team is built on the run game of Henry. And that's what it is. And that defensive front that they've been able to get, whether it's Dupree, whether it's Simmons, whether those guys have come through, that's where they've got to win the game.
Thanks for watching the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi. And for more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to VSiN Live and the GM Shuffle podcast with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN, wherever you get your podcasts.